29.
Or shall we wait for a couple of more minutes?
Let's wait for 5 minutes.
Because I think for today's option, at least around 40-45 people have accepted today's time.
Right. We're already at 38. So we'll wait for five more people.
Yeah.
So we have got at least many known faces with us. Ashwin is there, Venus is there, Yashodhan Bhai is there. Apart from the core team, I'm talking about. Yes, so we are now 40. So it is 43 now.
Yeah, Uday, I think you may start the introduction.
Yeah. So now we are 44, 45 now. Okay, that's fine. Out of more than now is at least 50% is there. Out of 90, 45 are there.
For now, we are at 100 participants who have so far registered.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Anyway, let us just start formally now. The 47 is there already. First of all, I welcome all on the behalf of the BCSG and Bird Count of India, everyone to this seminar on the workshop on the Passage Migrant. And really, I feel really overwhelmed with the response which we have received. We were thinking about at the most 80 participants now, but we have to close it at 100. And still the query is going on. And the participants are from various parts of the country. So I welcome all and thank you all for joining, as well as for showing their willingness to join this Passage Migrant Count. I believe this is the first time we are conducting this kind of a survey, and I hope it will be really interesting, and we will come out with certain good information with us. Now I will request Kunan to take up the further aid.
Thank you so much, Uday. Good afternoon, everyone. Without taking much time, I'll start with the overview of the whole program, how it is going to happen. As we have already suggested in the article, we are going to assemble at 5 o'clock in the evening at Bhuj. The exact venue of the meeting point is yet to be finalized, which shall be finalized by 3rd or 4th of September. So before a week or so, before starting the survey, we will share the exact location of the meeting point, where between 5 to 7, we are going to meet each other personally, because few of them we know, many of the new friends which we are going to meet them for the first time. It will be a nice experience there. Apart from that, we'll have some last minute queries or doubts if any participants have, so that can be resolved. So we are going to keep that between 5 to 7, where each participant will have to reach at least by 5:30, subject to their commutation to Bhuj. After 7 o'clock, we are going to start with dinner. The reason for starting with early dinner is that there are some destination points to which we will come later on. are a little farther from Bhuj. And those teams who are going to travel to those destinations may have to start little early in the evening to reach to their destinations. We are hoping that we shall finish dinner between 7 to 9 p.m. By 9 p.m. we shall conclude and we all shall depart for our respective destinations, where each team will be stationed for 2 days for the survey days. And from Bhuj to their destinations, the commutation is going to be arranged. So each team will have their vehicles. Wherever the private vehicles are there with the teams, they'll be traveling through their own vehicles. Wherever the vehicles are not there, the commutation provisions will be made for those teams. Those vehicles will remain with the teams for both the days of survey. And after concluding the survey on 11th evening, those vehicles would bring the teams back to Bhuj in the evening. And we are hopeful and we are arranging that so that the teams may reach Bhuj, say by 7:30 latest in the evening to Bhuj. And at Bhuj, we are going to have a dinner again with all the participants, whoever are joining us. Because few participants may have their commutations arranged in a way where they may not be able to join us. So whoever is present there, we are going to have dinner together. And then we are planning to disperse, say around 9:30, 10 o'clock. This is the overview of the 2 days activity. Now, going into little detail of how the survey is going to be conducted. So, as we all know, Kutch is a huge area. When we searched on the map for the total area of Kutch, it came to 45,000 square kilometers. And the first reaction after seeing the area was that how are we going to cover such a huge area? So thereafter there was deliberation, and we had come up with a best possible method for now. For India, this is the first time we are going to have such kind of a survey. So we are also open to any suggestions from the participants for the next year, because we are planning to make this survey an annual affair, and we want to take it to a long-term study. So every year during this migration season, we are going to conduct this survey. That is the hope and dream we all share. Coming back to the modalities of how the teams are going to conduct their survey. So as I said, after finishing their dinner on 9th of September, the teams are going to depart for their respective destinations. Arpit, can I request you to share the map so that we may give brief idea of how the teams are going to be located? I hope all participants are able to see the screen which Arpit has shared. And everyone is seeing the small little green dots which covers the whole district of Kutch. So these are the survey points for our purpose. Now, if we see Bhuj Forest Department guest house is marked on the map in the blue region. Here we all are assembling on 9th. As we can see, there are certain very far points towards western edge of Kutch, which area is better known as Lakhpat. Then there are certain areas towards Khadir Bet in green. So Khadir guest house, if we all will be able to see that, Dholavira and Khadir. So these are the distances which are very far from Bhuj. In fact, we would be coming to that certain teams may not have to travel to Bhuj all the way. The teams which are going to be stationed at Dholavira and other places. So that,
ધોલાવેરા, રુદ્રાણી, રાપર, આડેસર,
yes, so
ભચાઉ.
the eastern part of Kutch. So eastern part of Kutch, those teams who are going to participate in eastern part of Kutch, because we all will be entering from east towards west. So those teams who are going to go to eastern part of Kutch, they may probably not be coming to Bhuj, subject to the availability of time and commutation. But coming back to the distances, so from Bhuj, there are certain distances which are very far, which would take a team to reach to their destination place, which would be like 3 hours traveling time, at least couple of hours traveling time, 2 to 3 hours traveling time. Therefore, we are hoping that by certain teams who are going to go to those areas may start say around 7:30 in the evening, so that they can safely reach their destination say by around 10 o'clock in the night, to have some rest and start survey on the next day. Coming to the accommodation for the teams, we have tied up with the forest department, and forest department has been kind enough to support us by providing their guest houses for accommodation of the participants. So there are different places, there are different regions where the forest department has its guest houses, which I'm thankful to Arpit. He has already marked certain places. Like we have forest department at Narayan Sarovar, then Nalia forest guest house is there, Nakhatrana there is a forest guest house. So all these places would be the place of accommodation. Each team would be given their place of accommodation along with the coordinates, so that they don't find any difficulty in reaching the destination. We are also in coordination with the forest department, so when the teams reach, there will be someone at the forest department to receive them and guide them. That is also being arranged. So all these teams would be stationed at different locations wherever the forest department has their destinations. In case, since we were expecting the participation, we wanted to keep the participation to say around 75 to 80 members, but the participation count has almost reached to 100 people. So wherever the forest department accommodation would not be available, we'll try to arrange for some other accommodation, which may not be luxurious, but which would be comfortable and at least clean and safe. These are the primary considerations. So this is how the teams are going to be accommodated at various places. Now, after reaching to their destination place, the team is going to be stationed at their destination for 2 nights, that is the 9th night and the 10th night. We are going to start survey from 10th morning, expecting sunrise to be somewhere around 6:30 in the morning. We would request the teams to start their survey at least by 6:30, 6:45, when they should be in the field, and continue their survey for 2 days. Now, coming to the modality of the survey and the protocols of the survey, how we have envisaged this survey is, we are all seeing these green dots. Now, these green dots are particular coordinates marked, keeping in view different habitats and with a view to cover as much area as possible. We are thankful to Arpit and Ashwin for helping with this. And I'm very thankful to Uday for sitting with me for say at least around 12 hours to have preliminary surveys marked. So these survey points represent particular coordinate where each team will have to go. The survey points are almost around 250 survey points are marked on the map. And considering the count of the participants, we are likely to have at least around 25 to 30 teams. So that makes at least 5 to 6 survey points for a team to cover in 1 day. Each team would have around 10 to 12 survey points to be covered in 2 days. We are not going to cover same survey point on both the days. for both the days, there will be different survey points. So in all, there will be 10 survey points. And for one day, it would be 5 survey points, 5 to 6 survey points. Now, how a team is going to take account the survey protocol, I would request all the participants to please pay attention to this. When a team, Arpit, can you enlarge, zoom in the one of the survey points?
With Google Earth map.
With any map, that's fine. I think this is sufficient. So we can go to any particular survey point. Arpit, if you can zoom in completely so that they would get a view of the terrain also. At some places,
Yeah, better on Google Earth.
Yeah. So any one or 2 points together, only not much.
yes. I think
Not
we
all.
have got a complete
Not all
picture of
Okay,
all
that's
the
fine.
survey
Okay.
points. Right. So now let us take for an example T2 P4. T2 P4. Now, if we see this survey points, how we have marked these survey points, keeping in mind the road connectivity. So almost all the survey points are on the motorable roads. How the teams are going to survey this particular location. So if we see there is a motorable road where the survey point is marked. So a team reaches this survey point. Now to reach to this survey point, each team would be given their own survey points, coordinates of their own survey points. So each team will have at least around 10 to 12 coordinates, which they will have to cover. Now, when you reach to this particular coordinate as a team, after parking your vehicle, the team together may have to cover distance of 500 meters in 2 directions, any 2 random directions. So if we see this particular terrain, this is more of wasteland with scant scrubs and bit of thorny forest. Team can walk through these points wherever it is possible to walk through. We do not wish the teams to spend more than an hour at a particular survey point, considering the time constraint. Because if we consider that we are going to start survey in the morning at 6:30, and we consider that by evening 6 to 6:30, if the teams are going to conclude their day's survey, keeping the provision for lunch, breakfast, and other time-consuming activities,
Travel
and travel as well, because these are the quite long paths which we are going to treat. Each survey point would have at least around 15 to 20 kilometers distance from each other. So that would be a traveling of say around at least around 60 to 70 kilometers in a day. So considering all these time constraints, at the end of the day, a team may have say around 6 to 7 hours of survey time, which we call neat survey time, at their hand. So when you are surveying a particular point, you may just keep in mind that whatever other survey points you have to cover, that may not be missed. For the reason that one of the protocol we have developed for the survey is that each and every point will have to be covered by the teams. You cannot miss any particular survey point, because if that survey point is missed, then it would not be counted for survey or the data analysis. So therefore, probably each team would have somewhere around at least an hour's time, hour and a half's time to survey a particular point. Now, once you survey this point, at the survey point, one of the team members will have to create a checklist on eBird we are not going with any physical entries in any notebook or any chart sheet. We are trying to make it a paperless survey, and therefore there will be no forms to be filled in. The entries will be entered, whatever birds you will be recording would be through eBird checklist only, which data will be finally compiled. Now, therefore, one of the team members will have to start the checklist as soon as you reach the survey point. Apart from the 8 passage migrants, which we are going to survey, we want all the teams to enter in the checklist all the birds, apart from the passage migrants, whatever birds you record at the survey point. Of course, the concentration of the team would be on the passage migrants, but apart from that, whatever cursory look at other species shall also have to be included in the checklist to make it a complete checklist. Now, after surveying a particular point, you may be traveling to the next survey point, which would be probably at a distance of 15 to 20 kilometers. During the travel or commutation from one survey point to other survey point, you may come across certain passage migrants or certain other birds. The teams are requested to enter those by way of probably incidental checklist or other checklist, which may not be part of the analysis for the count, but would surely help for future analysis if someone wants to use the data on eBird. So if it is possible during the commutation also, if you come across any passage migrant or any other bird, the teams may record them through their checklist, incidental checklist, and share it with the other members. So each team, one of the team member would make the checklist, and that checklist would be shared with other team members. Now, apart from other team members, the team will have to share that checklist with the eBird ID BCSG bird count. That eBird ID we will share on WhatsApp group with everyone, so that there are no spelling errors or other mistakes. For the reason that that would be the master data which would be collected. So apart from your team members, you will have to share that checklist with another eBird ID, which we'll provide on WhatsApp. Now, if we see this particular area, since we are, Arpit, can you zoom out a little? Bus, that's it, thank you. So here, if we see this area, here the teams which will be stationed will have accommodation at Narayan Sarovar Sanctuary, where forest department has its own guest house. So there will be probably 2 or 3 teams stationed at this. The teams, partially the teams would be traveling to south. Some of the teams would be traveling to north. Now here, this survey points, say a particular team, team 2. This is T2P1. So that team is covering, say, this 10 survey points from T2P1 to T2P8. The survey points are random in nature. You can pick up any survey point during the day according to your convenience, but you will have to cover all the survey points. Why we are saying, or why we are keeping these survey points random is for another reason, is that on 10th, say a team travels from point 1 to point 6, or a team can cover T2P1, T2P3, then directly go to T2P9 also and come back to T2P5. So that your commutation on 10th to your station is less during evening hours when you are completely exhausted. So you can choose any random survey points during the day. What we suggest is that after completing the survey, when the team goes to the station point and starts the survey on the next day, the teams may choose their survey points in a way whereby their last survey points comes towards Bhuj, nearer to Bhuj. For an example, if we are talking about this very team, if they keep their survey at T2 P7, they would be probably nearing towards Bhuj. Why this suggestion is for the reason that on 11th of September, after finishing the survey in the evening, you will be directly traveling toward to Bhuj, to reach Bhuj. So if a team covers the distance, it would shorten their distance from the survey point to Bhuj, their onwards commutation. So this part, probably, I hope I'm clear to all participants that the survey protocols are mandatory. I'll repeat it once again. First thing, you will have to cover all the survey points in these 2 days. There will be no repetition of the survey points. So you cannot cover the same survey point again. Secondly, whenever you reach to survey point, station your vehicle there, walk for 500 meters, spend 1 to 1.5 hours subject to the availability of time and availability of the species. Record all the species in the region apart from passage migrants as well. Of course, passage migrant is of prime concern, but all the species we want to report. After making the checklist for that particular survey point at that particular coordinate, you would be traveling to next survey point. During commutation also, team may record passage migrants or other birds they want to report, but that would not be used for analysis purpose. After finishing survey points on 10th September, they will have to go back to their station place where they've spent their night on 9th. They'll be spending their 10th night also at the same place. On 11th, again, they will start with new 5 survey points, 5 or 6 survey points. They'll cover all 6 survey points, keeping in mind that they travel towards Bhuj as far as possible, finishing those survey points and traveling to Bhuj on 11th September. Now, during this survey, apart from the teams, we are trying to have local help also. So the forest department or the local people will be accompanying the team in case of any breakdowns or any help needed. So wherever possible, a local person would attend the team, will travel along with the team and will stay with them for any emergencies and urgencies. Apart from the local help, the coordinators are always there to help you out. So in case of any emergency or anything, we should be approachable and subject to, of course, the connectivity, because sometimes the mobile networks are very weak in Kutch and it may not be possible to immediately answer the request. Apart from that, Uday, am I missing on something? You can just point out if I'm missing on some point.
You finish up, David, add up certain things.
Okay, fine. So the local help is going to be available to everyone. The commutation, the vehicle which is traveling along with you is going to be with you for 10th and 11th. Now, so far as the food part is concerned, there are certain places in Kutch which are developed where teams would get their lunch and dinner at any place. We don't have any good hotels or very luxurious hotel, but yes, there are good places, there are good food joints on highways and in the towns and everywhere where the teams are going to have their lodging. So far as the dinner part is concerned, I would request all teams to at least have a look in their region when they are traveling, because at certain points in certain remote areas, the places close down really early in the evening in Kutch. So there, of course, we will be trying the local person, or if the local person is not there, we'll ensure that we give you the coordinates of the lodging place where the teams can have their lodging. But subject to timings, they will have to adjust so that they can finish their dinner, say, at some places by 7 or 8 o'clock. So late in the night, say like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, one may not find anything in certain parts of Kutch where the remote parts are there. So apart from the lodging available for lunch and dinner, the teams may carry, each participant may carry their preferences, some snacks or something handy in for emergencies. Now, after finishing the survey, we'll be meeting again, as I said, we'll be meeting on 11th evening at Bhuj again. We'll finish up the dinner and then the participants would be making their onwards journey. I think anything else? Only one thing I think everyone is aware, but I'll just repeat myself that so far as this survey is concerned, we are concentrating only on 8 species, which are passage migrant, which are shared with the article. So the prime concern is for those 8 species only. I think from my side, anything is to be added, Uday, Ashwin?
Okay, wait a minute. Just a minute. I was with the chart.
I think that covered everything. Once after Uday clarifies some more thoughts about logistics, I'll take you through the article again.
Okay. 2-3 points which I have to say. We have used the term the forest guest house, but many of the places it is not the kind of a guest house. Some of the places kind of the inspection bungalow. Probably 3 places it is just a putting up the coat in the quarter. That is one part. And probably 3 places only. At present, there are 3 places where we have to put the coat in the quarter. And the places like Nakadra, and though it is inspection bungalow, but I remember only one room will have the English toilet, another will not have the English toilet. They will have the Indian toilet kind of thing. So participants will have to be ready to meet that kind of arrangements, because otherwise it becomes difficult. At some places they may have to share in 3 person in a room. It's not possible that it will be a 2-room kind of accommodation. We definitely going to take care of the female participant. The female will be kept in 1 room. There is no doubt about it. But otherwise, they will have to be in the room. With the 2 coat, one may have to 3 person may have to stay there. Kunan bhai, is it okay?
I think it covers the point. So basically, we will ensure that the places are sufficiently good to stay, but it may not be a luxurious stay. It would be with basic amenities available at the place. It may not be a luxurious stay for everyone. As you said, of course, the female participants will be taken care of, where all female participants will be staying together.
Yeah.
And apart from that, one more thing which I forgot to point out. So when we are going to announce the teams very soon, now since we have got the participation and registrations closed, so we now know the exact numbers of the participants. We'll be announcing the team. So each team is going to have one experienced birder, which will be based on the responses which we have received and the personal knowledge we all share. So each team will have one experienced birder who will be able to identify all the passage migrants, along with one amateur birder and one very novice, so that they can also learn with the experience of experienced birders for the fine points to identify the birds in the field. Because as experience goes, whatever photographs we see, whatever identification features we see, seeing the birds in the field and identifying them sometimes becomes really difficult. So that's how the teams are going to be made up, that where we have one experienced birder to help them out. Second suggestion was that with so many entries, we have found that the participants have only cameras. Of course, camera is one of the best equipment to record the bird. I myself use camera very often. But apart from camera, to actually see the fine features of differentiation, sometimes when you see through the camera, you miss out on the broader perspective of the habitat of the bird, its behavior. So it's always better to carry at least a binocular in the field along with the camera. I would request, I think there's some. So I would request all the participants, if possible, please carry your binoculars because it is the most helpful tool in the field for a bird watcher. Apart from the survey, apart from counting, having a binocular and seeing the birds through binocular gives much better horizon to the bird watcher. That is what I feel. So, of course, camera is one of the best tool to record, but best tool for identification and other features, the binoculars is very mandatory. So, if possible, we'll request all the participants to carry their binoculars. I think from my end, I'll now go for the queries and to answer them for the doubts. Ashwin, you can start with the...
Yeah, Kunan, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Can you address them before we move on?
I was thinking that once you finish your, then we can open up the question answer thing.
Okay.
I'll start going through them.
Okay, fine. Just to clarify about binoculars and camera, as Kunan said, if you have binoculars or if you can find a way to get binoculars, then please get it along with you in addition to the camera. So it always enhances how efficient you are while birding. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll take you through the article. And the article again has a little bit about protocol, but just so that it becomes better reinforced. So I'll just share my screen. A lot of this has already been, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So these passage migrants, I suppose most of you have read this article. I'm hoping that the background is clear. But Gujarat is special for passage migration in India, in that it has the largest concentration of birds that regularly move through the Indian subcontinent while making their way to Africa. And we have at least 8 species that regularly use this route. And regions like Kutch might be extremely important for these species, even for these populations to survive, because if they're not passing through Kutch, they may not be able to get that kind of food while continuing to move on to Africa. The birds that we're focusing on are European roller, red-backed and red-tailed shrike, spotted flycatcher, rufous-tailed scrub robin, greater white-throat, common cuckoo, and blue-cheek beater. Now, all of these birds do not always synchronize in that they have their peak migratory periods that may not always occur at the same time. So it's possible that during these 2 days, we might have lots of European rollers, but very few rufous-tailed scrub robins. Or we might have a large number of scrub robins, but not many white-throats. So it's there are these pulses in when these birds are moving through based on the environment, based on climate at their breeding grounds, based on when they have bred. So there are a lot of factors that determine when they're going to be moving through. And I think this is the first step to even understand how to be able to predict passage migration well. And hopefully in the next year, this time it's 1 weekend, but in the coming years, it will be all weekends of September, hopefully. And it's incredible to see the sort of participation here. 70 people in a Zoom call now, and nobody wants to attend Zoom calls is quite heartening. And as Kunan mentioned, eBird is going to be used as a tool to be able to compile information from every team. And it's the way the teams are going to be formed. They're also going to try and ensure that there's somebody who's familiar with the platform, who's able to use make checklists and knows the difference, say, between a complete checklist and an incomplete checklist. All the survey points require complete checklists, which means that every bird species that you see or hear in that period, not just the passage migrants, should be entered. So here I have an example on my screen of what a complete checklist might look like. So you see a large number, 22 European rollers, 34 rufous-tailed scrub robins. If you're very lucky, you might have numbers like this, and this is unpredictable. You might have some prosopis trees that are full of passage migrants during one day, and the next day they're gone. So that's the reality of passage migration. But also notice that all of the other species that were present are also entered here. So it's important that during that 1 hour count, to not get too distracted by a few species and ensure that you're taking in everything into account, right? Every bird that you're seeing or hearing. And also for this matter, I would say that I know it's difficult, but to try and minimize distractions aside from the survey point so that it can be as systematic as possible. And we can compare easily between years and between points. Now, I don't know whether everybody is familiar yet with trip reports, but all of us will be able to see live as we upload checklists. We'll be able to see live what the entire survey, all the survey teams put together are observing as a group. And I think that will be really nice. The trip report link will be shared with everybody. And please keep looking at it and keep uploading your checklists as and when you make them, assuming identification is, there's no identification doubts. And as you upload it, we can see as a group how many passage migrants we are documenting. And I'll take you through some part of the protocol. Now, most of it Kunan has already gone through, but I'll just reiterate one thing, that when a team of 3 to 5 people reaches the location, stop at each assigned survey point and walk 500 meters in any 2 opposing directions, right? And try and spend about totally, while covering 500 meters on one side and on the other side, try and spend approximately an hour, not more than that. Count all passage migrants. This doesn't mean that you need to walk on the roads. You can walk into the habitat on the side and come back if that's possible. So any 2 500-meter tracks. Note them down in an eBird checklist, which you can name. If anybody has a doubt on how to name a checklist made at any point, I can try and clarify that. But you can, when you create any location on the app, you get the option of naming it before uploading, and name it as passage migration count point, survey point, whatever name, right? And when you're uploading it, share it with the BCSG bird count eBird ID. And again, reiteration that the checklists need to be complete. And very importantly, before proceeding on the survey, before those days, put in some time to try and familiarize yourself with all of the passage migrants. Some of them are easy to identify: European roller, blue cheek beater. Although blue cheek beater, often you detect them by the sound while they're flying and migrating over. Common cuckoo is easy to identify, but the shrikes, sometimes spotted flycatcher, rufous-tailed crab robin, these birds can hide and can be slightly difficult to identify. Greater white throat as well. So it's important to make yourself as comfortable as possible with these. And there are easy tools for this. You can use a combination of Merlin. You can use a combination of photos that are already available on eBird in the Macaulay library. There's a question or two. Let me just, nice to mention. Okay, and whenever there is any confusion in identification or there are any doubts, I'd encourage everybody to take photographs. So take photographs, but perhaps do not spend too much time taking photographs, because then you may not be able to find as many passage migrants as possible. But do take photographs of any species that is difficult to identify. Share it on the group, share it live. At the moment you take it, maybe a screenshot, and we can immediately help you with ID. Whoever has access to WhatsApp. So another question, usually eBird advises to make 15-minute checklists. So here there is no time constraint per se. It's more of a distance constraint. So make sure that every checklist includes a distance of 500 meters and on one side of the point, and 500 meters on the other side of the point. So this might take you half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour, depending upon the landscape, depending upon how difficult identification is. So we don't want to, because sometimes there'll be a lot of time that is spent looking at a shrike, wondering whether it's a red-back shrike or a red-tailed shrike, etc. We don't want any time constraint. The only thing to keep in mind is don't spend too much time at every point, because then covering all points is going to become difficult. So no 15-minute recommendation. Instead, as much time as it takes. But make sure the distance of each checklist as you walk 500 meters on one side, 500 meters on the other side, the automatic distance, bring it down to 1 kilometer. Yeah, right. So you make sure that you have walked up approximately 1 kilometer of total distance. Do you have to submit separate checklists for each survey point? Yes, that's very, very important. Separate checklists that have for each survey point and made at that survey point so that the GPS location is taken exactly of that survey point. So when you reach the survey point, first thing to do is to start the checklist and then keep on field live, make the checklist. Somebody in the team can do that. Assuming not everybody is familiar with smartphones, we try and ensure that every team has somebody who is familiar with the app, so that the amount of work later on becomes reduced, and the potential for mistakes also becomes reduced later, because then you don't have to worry about getting the correct GPS point. You don't have to worry about tallying with the right survey point. So there are many things that are taken care of if you make the checklist on field at that point. And yes, each survey point has to have a different checklist. If you make any checklist that is aside from the survey point, somewhere in between or anything, name them separately. Don't give them any survey point name, and those should be separate checklists. They should not be part of any of the survey point checklists. Is that clear?
Ashwin, we may make one thing clear here, that each team will make only one checklist. All participants will share it. So
Yes,
there
yes.
should not be multiple checklists by individual members of a particular team.
Yeah, very, very good point. So what Kunan said was that every team has to coordinate such that only one individual is making those checklists and sharing it. Because if more than one person make a checklist for the same point, then it becomes duplicated. So it should be made by one person and shared with everybody else in the way that eBird checklists are usually shared with everybody's eBird IDs, only within that team. Is that clear?
And I think we can answer the queries later on. I'm keeping a tab on all the queries which have come. So we'll start answering them one by one.
Okay. Yeah. So I will show how to do it on the app. So that's one of the points in this. Yeah, but okay. Aside from all of the species in question, these 8 passage migrants, there are many other passage migrants that are possible. There are certain warblers, certain interesting warblers that are that Iduna warblers that look like booted and Sykes warbler that are also possible in passage. But that might not be very exciting for many people. But there's European nightjar, there's rufous-tailed rock thrush, scaup owl, and many other possibilities, especially shorebirds, and some real rarities as you go to areas near the border. So do keep an eye out for all of those, but continue to focus on the passage migrants in question. And I'll stop for now. I won't get into identification yet. Maybe we'll take some questions before we get into identification. And I'll also take you through the eBird app once before that.
Okay, so I'll just go through the comments, the queries which have been raised for now.
Yeah.
Pahi Parikh has raised query, are we going to carry our luggages on 11 so that we can directly reach Bhuj in the evening? Yes, so answering this query, each team while starting in the morning of 11 will carry their luggage in their vehicle, so that after finishing the last survey point, they can directly go to Bhuj. So on 11th morning, yes, all teams. On 10th, there is no need, but on 11th, yes, they will have to carry their luggage. Another query is by Mr. Naimuddin Sayed. In remote areas, Geo is mostly working. Thank you for the suggestion, so that we all keep in mind that if we have Geo SIM cards, we'll keep it activated. Do we have the nocturnal count? No, we have avoided nocturnal count because otherwise it would become too tedious. This was a matter of concern because European nightjar is one of the passage migrant. But for this survey, we have kept European nightjar out of the purview for the reason that having nocturnal counts would burden the teams so much in 2 days. But yes, if you have some location, or if you come across European nightjar or other nocturnal bird, then you can of course add it in your checklist and make it a part of it, but it would not be counted for analysis purpose. Apart from, since we are talking about nocturnal, there have been some records of Eurasian scope owl as well through passage in Kutch. So we can keep an eye on that also. There's a suggestion by Chandrika Kirani that Dharmashala can be used for stay and food. Yes, we have kept that option in mind. So wherever possible, there are good dharmashalas available. In fact, at Lakhpat, there is a Gurudwara also. So if need be, we will be using those resources available to us. Mayank Namdev has said, kindly brief about composition of team. I think we have taken care of that subject. So how the teams are going to be composed. So one experienced birder would be there along with amateur birders. Then there are many defense establishments in the area. I hope it has been checked that coordinates are not falling in defense areas. Yes, Mayank bhai, we have checked up, and wherever the defense areas are part of the survey points, there, if we get permission, so we are in the process of requesting them to give access to those areas. If we get permission, subject to the conditions, we will be surveying those areas, subject to the available permissions given by the defense forces. Mihir Jadhav has said there were no options to choose both of them. Yes, that is correct. So we hope that everyone who is carrying a camera is also carrying binoculars. Tina has asked question, will map be provided of the area given for survey? Answer to this question is yes, Tina, we will be giving exact coordinates of the survey points. We also request, this is a good question, we'll also request all the participants, if possible, if they have Google Maps on their mobile phones, to download offline maps of that particular area. You can, Google provides you an option of demarcating a particular area and use it offline. In Kutch, there are quite a many places where the network is weak or not available. There's offline maps would be handy to you. Apart from that, yes, the coordinates of each individual survey points would be given to you. So once you feed in into the Google Maps those survey points, it will take you to those survey points. So that would be made available soon to the teams once the teams are finalized. Nutan has asked the question, will you be giving us a checklist of things to carry? We can list down the basic things to carry and we will share. Each individual participant has his own choices. So apart from few mandatory things, we may recommend certain things on WhatsApp group. We'll try to enlist those things, something like a sleeping bag if available to you, or if you want to use your own linen or something to eat. So those basic things we will try to enlist and put, subject to the suggestions by the participants that we will discuss on WhatsApp group. Dhaval's query is with regard to the insight on data analysis. I think Dhaval, Ashwin is the best person. Ashwin and Arpit would be working on analysis of the data. And I would add here that apart from the trip report, which definitely is going to be shared with all the participants, so all the participants would get the observations made during survey. If analysis is done and it is being compiled, it would also be shared with all the registered email addresses, subject to when it is complete.
And if I can say something there, yes, there is a plan to bring out a more formal analysis out of this. And we welcome any participation from the group, from people who are participating in the survey. And Dhaval, it'll be wonderful if you're also involved in the analysis. What we're thinking of at the moment is that because it is systematic in terms of distance, and we go forward with the general assumption that over those 2 days, that birds do not change their position too much within the area, we should be able to get at densities in the entire landscape, because we have points that are covering the landscape. And we might have to do a little bit of trial and error based on what the data is looking like, but hopefully we'll be able to get the density for each of these 8 species in Kutch during this weekend of passage. So let's see. Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that somebody's volunteered.
That burden is shared by all of you. I will not become part of it. Okay.
So, Ashwin, we can have another group, I mean, a subgroup of all the analysts.
Certainly, yes.
Yeah, that would be very nice. Then there is another query on eBird Count India site. It mentions to cover 500 meter in opposite directions. Yes, so Mayank bhai, that was written so that there is no overlap, but then it is random. Any 2 direction you can choose in 500 meter periphery and try to cover the maximum area as possible, so that there is no repetition of the count in the same checklist. The idea of writing to opposite direction is that to avoid repetition of the count. Here, I would like to add here that when we are taking a count, usually even during e-birding sessions through our normal bird watching trips also, we usually try to avoid overlap of counts, of multiple counts. And for that, the parameters are already shared on eBird's website, how to avoid overlap. Ashwin has given a nice talk also on how to overlap. So for an example, if we are walking in a particular direction from point A to point B, we start a checklist, we record all the birds while reaching from point A to point B. Now, when we are returning from point B to point A again, we would not count those birds which are already counted. So unless and until you see a new species, or unless and until you are sure that you are not recounting the very bird which you have counted, we would like to avoid those counts. Ashwin, if you can just clarify more lucidly, probably.
Yes. So typically, especially when you're walking small distances, you get an idea of what you've already seen and what might be new. So when you're walking back, only count those that you believe are new and you did not count during the 500 meter walk up to that place. So always keep in mind that you should avoid double counting and be as cautious as possible about that from your own side. Sometimes there might be cases where you're a bit confused about, was this there before, is this a new bird? In that case, you can take your best judgment of what you believe is likely there. But when you go to the other side, now again, near the other 500 meters, you're counting everything again. But you're combining both 500 meter tracks into one checklist.
Okay, going further, each survey point has separate checklist. Yes, for each survey point, as Ashwin has clarified, for each survey point, we'll be making a separate checklist, which would be restricted only for that survey point. And for commutation, we are going to make separate checklists. I think Irshad's query has been replied to, that we don't need to make, so Irshad 15 minute na nathi banawana. We are ek survey point nu ek checklist banse.
Bhai બે હતા ને, from one survey point to 2 checklist or the one checklist? One 500 meter, another 500 meter. I am confused. I think that
just one checklist.
Yeah, I'm also confused.
Yeah.
Okay. From one survey point, one checklist. That's fine. Okay. Final now.
Yeah.
Okay.
One survey point, one checklist. And actually, Venus, I'll reply to, good opportunity to reply to Venus's message also. Point A to point B and return B to A becomes 1000 meters, but it's only 500 meters of birding. It's only 500 meters of sampling. So ideally, what you should do is 500 meters in one way and back. Although you have walked 1 kilometer, the distance to be noted in the app is only 500 meters. So when you do 500 plus 500, and then again the 500 plus 500, the total distance you'll be noting is 1 kilometer on the app, not 2, because it's actually only 1 kilometer of distance that has been covered, although you have walked 2 kilometers.
So we complete the 1 kilometer. After that, we end the checklist.
Yes, you complete both 500 meters and then end the checklist. But the distance to be noted is 1 kilometer in that.
Can I clarify this question? So what you do is basically your vehicle is parked at point A. So you are walking from point A to point B in one direction. While walking to point B, you will be making a checklist. You will be entering the birds. Then you will return from point B to point A. While returning from point B to point A, you will be recording or reporting only those species which were not marked. Or if there are the numbers have increased, which you know for sure that this is not overlapping or recounting. You will reach to point A. Now in other direction, you will start from point A again, going towards point C. So while going from point A to point C, again you will record or report or enter all the species which you see. And then while returning from point C to point A again, you will repeat the same thing. You will not report or record any species which you have already entered in the checklist, except there are new species and the increase in the numbers. I hope I am clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to address again Venus's point, yes, on the app it's actually going to show you double the distance. You should bring it down to 1 kilometer for each survey point, not what comes on the app. And actually, this is an important point for eBirding in general. If you're going to one location and coming back, actually, you should be noting down only half the distance on the app, not the full distance.
Got it now.
Ashwin, do we want to make it a stationary checklist or a traveling checklist?
Traveling.
Traveling.
Yes. A traveling complete checklist is what is recommended.
Another query is by Dhaivat. I think that is taken care of, that we will be making individual checklist for each survey point. Please demonstrate exactly how to name the checklist to include the GPS point. I think we'll make, at the end of the session, we'll make one demo checklist. Ashwin, if you can.
Yes, I'll do that from my phone.
Right, we'll do that. There is a query by Devan. Are we going to record environmental parameters like temperature, cloud cover, wind direction at starting of survey points? Here we would like to clarify that these parameters one can add in the checklist comments, but these are not made mandatory for each team to cover in the survey, because for now we are not going to cover this. So if it is always good if you can add these parameters in the checklist to have overall view, but they should not be mandatory.
Yeah,
I think Venus is the distance between each coordinate is around 15 to 20 kilometers. Can we prepare a separate complete checklist during commuting and not an incidental? Venus, by that would, if you want to make it a complete checklist, that would eat up time during commutation. So we suggest that rather than, Venus bhai, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm answering your query. That if you, it's always good to make a complete checklist, but if you want to make complete checklist during your commutation from one survey point to other survey point, that would eat up so much of time, which we do not wish to do. So you can keep it as incidental only. And rather than spending time watching birds during commutation, we can concentrate on survey points and try spending more time at survey points. Anurag Sagar's queries: one team, one coordinate, place, one checklist. We'll keep it for question answers because I couldn't decipher this. Nutan Raj's question is: can we get a list of all these passage migrants? Nutanji, we have already mentioned in the article which 8 passage migrants we are going to cover. Ashwin has already shared those names, those species. You can visit the article. I think Ashwin has already replied to that, shared the link to that article. Then another query by Mihir is, sir, if at one point, if members travel in opposite direction of, they will have separate checklists. I think this query is also taken care of, that we'll be having only one checklist for one survey point. Okay, there is a response. You are expected to travel as a team. There is another query. You mentioned that from one origin point, the exact survey point coordinates, we travel in a direction of 500 meters, listing down all the birds. Do we consider the birds we see again while returning to the origin point? I think this query is also taken care of, that you should not count those species or those numbers again unless and until there is a new species or marginal increase in the numbers of that particular species. Things to carry, do's and don'ts should be made aware for the people, especially outside Gujarat, as you mentioned that some areas are patrolled by defense. So replying to this, we would say that we are not going to enter the defense areas unless and until we have permissions from the defense departments. Apart from that, it is always advisable to reach to your station point at least say an hour after sunset, after finishing your dinner, so that you get good sleep and to avoid any mishaps. Though Gujarat is a very safe state and there are no untoward incidents in such areas, yet it's always good to take care of the situation. Udebhai, you had something to say about it?
You're muted, Udebhai.
You are on mute, Udebhai. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Wherever there is a requirement of the defense permissions, even if we have the permission, that team definitely going to have one person from the forest department accompanying them for any kind of the clearances. Even last minute clearances needed, they will be there. Probably only 2 teams will be required to enter in the areas where you need to have the defense permission. Yes, if any of the participants, if they are not citizen of India, they will require the definite permission to enter in the area anywhere, because from the boundary 100 kilometers, they need to have the permission of the collector, that you need the borderline clearance. So I believe everybody, all the participants are the Indian citizen. We take it granted that they are the Indian citizen.
All of us are Indian citizens, proud Indian citizens.
No. Might be somebody the NRIs, a kind of a thing. That is why I have to clarify.
No, so far we have not come across any participants. Here I would like to add one thing to take care of that for the participants outside the Gujarat. One thing I missed to clarify is that we are trying to ensure that each team has one bird watcher or one participant from Gujarat for the ease of language and other things. So we are going to coordinate teams in such a manner where each team would have at least one bird watcher from Gujarat, so that for communication with locals in case of necessity or something, that part can be taken care of.
Yeah. One more aspect, just not directly related with the survey, but for the participant is a point of caution. Rather from the Gujarat and from outside Gujarat, at least I feel when I see the list, I feel that at least 50% participant might be visiting for the first time the Kutch area itself. Now, don't go by the local person or that, okay, nearby area you will find this species, let us go. Somebody say, okay, we are on the survey, but on nearby area you will find the black-naped tip, let us go there. Or you may find the hypocoleus, let us go there. Don't deviate yourself during these 2 days. That is very important part. Ashwin, you're laughing, but just don't you think that is necessary?
I agree. That's very, very important.
because the local guide or local person accompanying them, or they say, okay, we have got this thing, let us go and see that. Okay, you come across within your area, that is fine. Don't try to say, okay, well, it's just 5 kilometers, let us go and check.
Yes,
Don't-
yes.
Please
I
avoid.
also have to keep that temptation away when I come.
That is secondly, we presume that each and every zone has got the equal opportunity of sightings, but some of the area has got the industrialized area or habitations, more habitations. Then don't blame that, okay, why we have been given this kind of the area. Every area has got the equal opportunity.
Here, I think I would also like to add that it is very difficult, or rather impossible, to predict that where the passage migrants are going to land up, in which area and in what density. So it is completely possible that in some areas there will be huge, like Ashwin has shared the checklist at one point. We were fortunate to hear and see around 30 Rufus Hill scrub robins at a particular day. And in fact, at that time, we had made around 12 days trip, and there were patches where we did not come across any birds, any passage migrants. So it is quite possible that some areas may have good density, some areas may not have. So participants may have to be prepared for such eventualities.
There was a question from Devin that about the wearing the camouflage dress, clothes. No issue. There is no issue in wearing the camouflage. They say that a border area is there, and somebody will think that somebody is impersonating like a border person. No, there is not such issue. The BSF or the defense personnel has got a definite dress code. So there is no issue that somebody is wearing a camouflage, they may create any issue.
Apart from this, I would like to add one more thing, that each participant will be given a badge for passage migrant survey. And the vehicles would also be carrying the badge of passage migrant survey, and we are going to spread the word. In fact, it has already been communicated to the forest department. So in case of any such event where they may be stopped by defense personnel, we would try to seek assistance of forest department, and things can be resolved. Am I right, Udabhay?
Yeah. Where there is a defense issue is going to encounter, we are going to tackle that part. On that area, there will be a forest personnel. That is what I have been told by the forest department, also informed, because as I am retired, so I have to take the consent of the people, my friends and colleagues. The another aspect was what we were saying, but that few teams will not be coming to Bhuj at all. So for them, we will make the arrangement in advance, where they will be getting their badges or like that.
So badges and everything we are going to share on 9th itself. Those teams who are not going to come to Bhuj on 9th, we'll try to ensure that it reaches to them through courier before the survey dates.
Courier or the place of the destination. Courier or the place of destination.
Any place,
Yeah.
but they would receive their badges and everything, so that they have something to show that they are participating in the survey.
Yeah.
We have another question. How many members will be there in a team, by Aryan Mehra? So for now, in fact, we were anticipating 3 members per team, but since we have more participants, there may be some teams with 3 or 4 participants, but we are ensuring that no team may have more than 4 participants. So that while
4 participants, Kunan by 4 participants, 1 driver and 1 might be a local guide.
Yes. So keeping in mind the availability of seats in the vehicle, we'll try to assign the teams, the members according to the. So that is not a fixed number.
On an
Coming
average,
to another query, Aniruddha has raised a query. I may have missed a point, and I'm sure the team will address it. I just wanted to understand how the survey points were selected. So Aniruddha, the survey points were selected keeping in mind the suitability of the habitat, as well as to try to cover all sorts of different habitats like thorn forests, scrublands, wastelands, agricultural part. So Arpit has taken care of the situation where we cover almost all the possible habitats, except the core urbanized habitats, which are like Bhuj and other towns.
So we are serving almost 30%. It's a gridded approach, and we are serving almost 30% of the Kutch mainland pass.
Okay, Arpit, do you want to add anything more to this? How you have mapped or something? So
Yeah,
that,
so it's a 5x5 kilometer into a mainland Kutch, so which is basic the main ridge, two islands, Wagar. We have not kind of completely covered the run. It came to around like 800 plus grid at a 5x5 kilometer. Out of that, we are almost doing 260. So that's more than like 32% of the coverage, which is sufficient for this kind of survey.
thank you.
Hmm.
Another query. If I know which area of my survey point on 9th and 10th prior, that would help. I am okay. Chandrika, so we are going to assign the teams and the participants and the areas as well for 10th and 11th, so that you can plan out your surveys if possible on 8th and 9th accordingly, so that you may not have to repeat the same area. So we'll be doing it soon within coming week itself.
Thank you so much, Kunan.
Yeah.
Another, but the checklist. Okay, winners by
Kunan.
queries, I think are taken care of. Yeah, tell me a bit.
Kunan, so people who are doing before 10th and 11th, they have to do same points or the other points that has to be clarified.
No, so what we see basically 1st to 9th survey, because Shanti Kaka and Deepak Bhai are also going to survey the areas before 10th and 11th. So those people who are doing between 1st and 9th, they have the option of choosing any area. You can repeat the survey points. If you like, you may take up new survey points also. But they will have to keep in mind that they will have to cover all the survey points. For an example, if we have covered 6 survey points for a team in one day and 6 other survey points for a team for the other day, then they will have to cover all those 12 survey points. In that case, only the data will be good for analysis. I hope I'm right, Ashwin. Or do we want to keep it only for one day?
I didn't entirely get that, but if I can just summarize.
So I'll just explain it to you briefly. That if I'm taking up a survey, say on 2nd of September, is it mandatory for me to take up survey for 2nd and 3rd both dates and cover all 12 points for that particular designated team? Or is it good if I take up only 6 survey points for that particular day?
I suggest that should take up only half.
Okay.
For a
So
day.
then in that case, what we keep for 1st to 9th is that for a particular day, the given set of 6 survey points which are there,
Yeah.
that may be covered. If those are not covered, then it would not be counted towards survey purpose.
Yes. No, actually, 1st to 9th, people can do whatever they want. I think that is the thing. Just go to cover survey points. Even if it's 1 or 2, I think it's fine, because 1st to 9th is not really coordinated.
I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't suggest that.
Kunan, if I may add,
Please.
this would make the analysis little difficult if we take into account the counts made between 1st and 8th, because 10th and 11th, we are doing it simultaneously. So that will have a clear-cut picture that we want to have in this study. So this taking into account the data which has been collected between 1st and 9th, I think that would make it wouldn't be worth it. That's my opinion.
I would leave
Yeah,
that.
Kunan bhai,
Kunan, can
to
I
the
clarify
analysis
this?
team. Now we have almost around 5 participants for analysis team. So I would leave that to their discretion. how do they want to use this data for analysis?
So I agree with Bakul Bhai's point that it's true that actually first to ninth cannot be analyzed the same way as 10th to 11th. And that's not the intention also. First to ninth, the only purpose is to allow more people to participate in case they cannot come during 10th and 11th, and to show us what differences are there within a point over time. But that is not going to be used for the main analysis. So that is true.
Please.
Venus Bhai has raised a query. Can we recommend everyone app like Strava to record exact track of our checklist? I didn't follow this. Venus Bhai, can you explain this? What is this app and how do you propose?
Strava will measure the distance, how much distance you have walked. Now there is probably say 500 meters is a guiding. Now if somebody just walk approximately, that may be the either 450 or maybe 550.
I think Venus Bhai, eBird with sufficient precision measures the distance you cover through. So each participant is free to use any other app. There is no compulsion not to use it. But we will go by whatever is reported on eBird, whatever is recorded by the eBird app.
No, the thing is that in the eBird, suppose there is no connectivity, then
eBird records even without connectivity, and then it will take it up.
Even offline, you don't need internet. So offline it will record. But I get Venus's point in that do we want a way to also record the tracks and have them available somewhere? And that maybe we can do that in the next survey where we have more time to coordinate, because I think the best way to go ahead with that is probably through an app called Locus Maps. So in the Kerala Bird Atlas, for example, people would make their checklists on eBird, where also it will be tracked, but also separately keep Locus Maps on and track routes. And together they have a complete picture of where people have gone and what has been done. But I think for this one, because it's the first one, maybe we can stay away from that and come back to it during the next survey.
Okay, so in fact, I was thinking of coming to this point later in point of time while ending it. But since we have talked about this, I would add here that this survey, we are planning to make it annually. So this is not the only survey which is going to happen. This exercise is going to continue for a long-term period, and every year during suitable dates during this Passage Migrant season, we are going to repeat this count. So I hope to see all the participants here again next year. Okay. There was another query by Chandrika that female birders are not required comfort. So please give survey. Yes, Chandrika, we are going to keep those things in mind. So we'll be coordinating with individual participants also, that if it is not physically convenient for few people to have excursions, we try to accommodate them at within the team, which have less, because this being a bird survey, it is going to have some kind of excursion, but we'll try to make it smoother than the other ones.
No, Kunan,
I believe because
Uday bhai, she has something to say.
Sorry, Kunan, હું તને એમ કહેવા માંગુ છું કે ફિમેલ ને એવું નહીં વિચારતો કે સ્પેશિયલ કમ્ફર્ટ ઝોન આપો. It is not the all females are not from the comfort zone.
And I understand. No, we have so many female participants who are so tough, and I'm really happy to know that you want to go to those areas.
Yeah, because
so I definitely keep in mind that you are kept in such a remote area.
I don't mind. I'm a Kutchi person, so I'm from Kutch anyway. So I don't mind, and I like to do
Noted.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that when there is a female participant, there will be at least 2 in a team. That was the thing what might convey, and that is even for the accommodation purpose. Only for the
we'll keep in mind that there are if someone is not very comfortable with taking up surveys in very remote and other areas, we'll try to accommodate them. It may not be possible to accommodate everyone, but to the best possible extent, we would try to take care of their needs.
Yeah, I think as a general rule, we can assume that
There's no
everybody is,
discrimination amongst man and women, but as a general rule. Considering
so-
the
Yeah,
health.
yeah,
so-
I understand, but just I thought that this might, because I heard in start that the 6 females will be together, and so I was like, I have
No,
done
no.
some surveys, and I was in my mind that I just don't want that keeping as a female as a comfort zone, and then just,
Yeah,
No, no,
Chandrika,
there is no
good
question of
point.
comfort zone. Only thing is
Yeah.
that it was in relation to only accommodation part, nothing else.
thank
So,
you, ઉદયભાઈ, આ તો જરાક મને લાગ્યું એટલે મેં કીધું મારો point કહી દઉં.
Fine.
Yeah.
Your
O-
readiness is
overall-
more important to us.
Yeah, we are ready, and it's nice to have that. And I wanted to do like for the Kutch, as always I'm there. Yeah.
I think overall, as a general thing to every participant, I think we can assume that everybody can go everywhere and be in any team. If anybody wants, whether male or female, if anybody wants any considerations, then please reach out to us and let us know. That's I think the best way to go forward with this.
Certainly. We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, Mittal's history, what about the photo conference from eBird to verify?
Udaybai, I'm responding. Udaybai, I'm responding individually. Let's go one by one. So there is another query by Sudeep Sinha for arrangement of accommodation on 8th. Sudeep, I think Reshma has also messaged me on this, and we can take care on the personal message. We personally are going to be there at Bhuj on 8th and 9th. So certainly some accommodation would be made subject to the availability and everything, but it would be made. So we need not worry about it, and we'll discuss on personal messages. Okay, there is another query by Ashwin. Would there be a limit on the distance at which you see a bird from your location and record it? With a scope, I may be able to sight and correctly identify a bird at 100 meters from my location in any direction. Yes, so Ashwin, you can try to identify the birds to the longest distance you are in a position to. Some teams will be having scopes, so those teams can, yes, of course, cover larger area than the other teams, and that is completely permissible. There is no limit on the distance of observing the birds.
I think the scope will have the time limit. So scope will be only in the exceptional circumstances somebody will be using it. By the time otherwise they set up the scope, the bird will flew away. These are not the wetland birds.
Okay, camouflage is taken care of. Mittal's question about verification of identification and everything. So Mittal, I think Ashwin has replied to that one can take a shot of the birds, share the screenshot, and we can get the confirmation on identification. If the team doesn't have, we'll go by their discretion that whatever they report would be correct to their best of their knowledge. So no need to mandatorily document the bird, but it is always good, as we always say on eBird, that it is always good to document if possible. But there is no mandatory requirement. I would like to add here that in case of the difficult birds, which Ashwin would come later in the session, where it is difficult to identify some juvenile strikes or female strikes, or identify the birds with their call like Rufous-Hill Scrub Robin. While putting, if you don't have documentation, it is always better to put in comments with the identification feature of the bird, rather than just saying that I have seen this bird or this bird was this only. It's always better so that it gives better insight on what you actually have seen.
Yeah.
After going to A to B instead of returning to B to A, would it not be better to move 100-200 meters from point B and return to a parallel line? This could enhance area and help avoid repeated counts. That can also be done. So basically, Apurva, what we are trying to achieve here is that at a given survey point, you try to cover as much area as possible within your reach, within the time constraint and the time frame we have at our end, and equally to see to it that we don't repeat the count. Yeah, Ashwin, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think just so that we are as systematic as possible and to limit confusion, I think it's good to stick to a single thing, that everybody just 500 meters on one side, 500 meters on the other side, and without changing protocol, because that can then be a little confusing in terms of analysis as well.
Yeah, so 500 meters on one side and the 500 on the other side, maybe somewhere on the or any periphery of the 500.
Yeah.
That is what the idea is. That is what
Another direction. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a discussion going on that. We'll manage email, not need any comfort zone. It can be kept unidentified. Nirav, but to everyone, it can be kept on strikes, SPS. Comment with pointers. I think we have reached to the end of the comment session.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So, I think Ashwin, you can take up the identification part with a couple of difficult phases of things. And
Yeah,
then
I think first step, because we can't go too much in depth into identification now, I think let me show more about the app, how to use the how to change.
Yeah, we can have one
location.
demo checklist made.
Yeah, and how to mark something a complete checklist or not. I'll just quickly take people through that. Yeah. So
Yeah, Ashwin bhai, is probably identification is more important. Every team will have some e-birder, at least better than me. So better than me, e-birder will be there. So the more important is the IP identification part, I think.
Okay.
We have got about 30 minutes, so at least he can take 10-15 minutes for the identification of the key species.
Ashwin, I would like you to concentrate on juvenile red-tail and red-back strikes and females, which are most confusing.
Okay, I'll do that. Let me just where is this? 1 second. What have I done? Oh, I have just quickly. Okay, so very quickly, I'll just take you through this. So you see, do you see my phone on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's say you reach a particular place at 5:30. I mean, that's a bit late, but a little earlier, you have the date that already comes in. You already have a portal that is set. You make sure that this option of record track is on. This is important. This is to all people who are familiar with eBird as well. And I'm also talking about this here because then the webinar can be looked at again. So you have this record track, make sure it's on. And then importantly, on top, in your make sure that your location, GPS is on. So these are two important things to keep in mind. GPS has to be on in your phone. So location has to be on. And you need to have record track on. After which you click on start checklist. And then that is it. And it's going to start, it's going to automatically take the location, GPS point, and it's going to give you a list of birds. So I can put, let's say I'm putting 1 spot-billed duck, 2 grey francolin, 1 peafowl, and some 10 feral pigeon, right? And this is my checklist. I have no passage migrants here, but that doesn't matter. In my 500 meters, there's nothing except 1 peafowl, 2 grey francolin, 1 spot-billed duck at flow over, and 10 feral pigeon. This will then become the checklist for that point. Let's say I've been doing this for 500 meters on each side. So then I stop the checklist. I stop track. This is only after you finish both 500 meters. Then you stop track. Stop track, and now you have distance and time will automatically come. But make it traveling in case it's not. So it's a traveling checklist. Automatically, you're going to have it around 2 kilometers because you've gone 500 meters, 500, then 500 and back. But you want to make this 1 kilometer. Distance, time, whatever the time is, will automatically come. So let's say about 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And how many ever participants? Remember to change this number. So let's say 4 or 5. Are you submitting a complete checklist of the birds you're able to identify? So this is very important. Make sure you observe everything and make sure that everything that you observed and identified is included in the checklist. And then you can click on yes over here. So now quickly going past this, notice that the location hasn't been chosen yet. Even if you do not have internet, whatever I did till now can be done. You do not need internet to do any of this, to track your thing, to put the birds in, to get your GPS location. None of this you need internet for. You only need internet when you're selecting a location finally. This you can even do later. Whenever you get internet, you can do this. Don't try to do this when you don't have internet. So you click on continue, and then it will start it will go to selecting that location. Okay. So what I'll do is in each of these cases, because this is the first time you'll be visiting that location. So what you should do is go to new location, auto selected, and you'll see an option that says rename. Do not put it in any hotspot. Do not put it in any pre-existing location. Put it in a new location that is suggested, and then you click on rename. And when you rename, you want to change the name to, let me now check what the name has to be changed to.
P1.
Passage Migrant Count 2022. Migrant Count 2022, followed by a dash, followed by survey point, whatever it is. Kunan, can you give me the name of any survey point?
P1.
Okay, P1.
P for Tamil Nadu.
Oh, P1, T1. Okay, for Tamil Nadu.
T stands for the team. T for Tamil Nadu, T1, and then P for Pune.
Oh, okay, fine.
So T stands for the term team.
Yes, got it. So this is correct, right? Something like this. T1, P1, and then I click on save. I don't want to click on save now because then it will create this point near my house, which will become very confusing. So I'm not doing it. But you click on save. Now you've created that point with that name, and this is where your checklist is going to be uploaded. But now, aside from that, let me show you how to share. So you see the sharing option. Click on that, and then you can put the names of anybody you want to share it with. So you need to do to the BCSG ID, which is given in the article, as well as any other eBird IDs. Okay, of your participants. Okay, that's it. That's it about using the app. It's very straightforward, but I think I've gone through a few slightly important issues here. So let me stop sharing over here. How do I stop sharing? And stop share. Yes. And does anybody have queries with this? Okay, no queries with this. I'll share my other screen, my computer screen, and actually take this opportunity to take you through identification of all the species that are there and what you need to keep in mind. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we are able to.
Yeah. So some of you might already be familiar with identifying these species. Some of you may not be. So broadly, with the 8 species that we are focusing on, the shrikes are the most difficult, red-backed and red-tailed shrikes, because they can have many immature plumages. If you're seeing an adult male, it often is much easier to identify these birds than if you're seeing any immature bird or a female. Also, there are species like spotted flycatcher, etc., where it's good to know a few simple points about how to identify it, as well as common white throat. These can also be a little difficult. So I'll quickly go through the easy species before coming to the difficult ones. Rufous-tailed scrub robin, extremely important. Listen to its sounds. And you can listen to its sounds on eBird Macaulay Library. And listen to the sounds also on the Bird Count India article. It has a C sound like that, which is very, very distinctive. So make sure you are aware of rufous-tailed scrub robin sound. Spotted flycatcher, again, make sure that you're able to listen to its sounds before starting the survey. But also, spotted flycatcher has very typical flycatcher-like behavior and very distinctive streaking on the head. as you can see with this individual here. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. Blue cheek beater, again, be aware of its sound as it flies over and it calls. It has a troop, troop, troop type call. Be aware of that. And common cuckoo, it is going to be more or less the only cuckoo that is going through the landscape, sitting on wires. And again, take a look at photos before you come. Now, which are the other ones that we have that are slightly easy? European roller is fairly straightforward. Look for a complete bluish face rather than an Indian roller, which has much more brown on the face. And the other, yeah, so these are all the slightly easier birds to identify. Now we come to the two important shrikes, red-backed shrike and red-tailed shrike, right? This is where my cursor is now. This is red-backed and this is red-tailed. Now, both of these shrikes can look very similar in different plumages to Isabelline shrike, to brown shrike, and even possibly bay-backed and long-tailed shrike. Now, how do you tell the difference? So, what I'm looking at here are photos of this shrike, of red-backed shrike, that have been uploaded to eBird. And this is a great way to get an idea of what the differences are going to be between them, to go through these photos. And here I've sorted this by best quality photos. Now, one thing that you see for red-backed shrike, right, as you go through a number of photos, is that the white patch on the side is very limited. It's called a patch at the base of the primaries. This is very limited, unlike, for example, bay-backed shrike. If you see bay-backed shrike, typically adult bay-backed shrikes have a very large white patch at the base of primaries. And also note that bay-backed shrike, again, adults have a very, very broad patch on the forehead. It's called a mask. So have a very, very broad mask, as opposed to red-backed shrike, which has a much narrower mask. So for bay-backed shrike, what do you look for? A much broader mask and a white patch at the base of primaries. These are two important factors. Now, an adult red-backed shrike also has a slight pinkish cast to the underparts, which none of the other shrikes actually have, this kind of pinkish cast. But then how do you identify immatures and juveniles? And actually for red-backed shrike, even females. So red-backed shrike, note that a bird that looks like this is an adult male. Females look different. So to go through this, now this is a typical juvenile. What you see over here, this very reddish colored fully. And this is also a distinctive appearance for red-backed shrike, immatures or juveniles. And females. So females don't look much like males. They look much duller. Females look more like this. Female red-backed shrikes. But this is an immature. This is an immature female. Okay, I'll get to a photo of a female first. But then how do we separate immatures? So notice that even these immature red-backed shrikes have a good amount of this brownish cast above and below. You see? Whereas juveniles of Isabelline shrike and some others will not have that brown. So getting back to the other confusing one, bay-backed shrike juveniles. So bay-backed shrikes are it's a little tough, as you can see, bay-backed shrike juveniles and Isabelline shrikes. But some of the differentiation is based on structure. Bay-backed shrike generally looks a lot more top-heavy, and slightly longer tail, the juveniles, and also a much more contrasting red tail to the rest of the body. Are people able to see that with these photos? This is talking about juveniles. Wait. So ideally, I'd like you to all go through all of the photos that are there and see what you're able to make out as differences as well. Okay, and bayback shrikes have much more contrast between a slightly grayer head and the rest of the body. Okay, quickly going to Isabelline shrike. So Isabelline shrike is one of the most common shrikes in Gujarat during winter. It's perhaps the most common, along with baybacked and long-tailed, which are largely resident. But as the migratory shrike, this is perhaps the most common. A good way to tell Isabelline shrike from the rest is that it has a very, very small bill compared to the rest. And it is truly sandy colored. There is very little redness to its body. Right? And it has a very small bill. Now, Isabelline shrike can look very, very similar at times to, so this is another subspecies of Isabelline shrike. This is more like ours. Can look very similar to red-tailed shrike. But good ways to tell red-tailed shrike apart is red-tailed shrike would have a more prominent supercilium. And again, coming back to the white patch on the primary. So if you look at Isabelline shrike, this white patch on the base of the primary is generally indistinct or faint. Can you see in all of these photos? It has a very faint to small patch, whereas red-tailed shrike, it's generally prominent. You have a very prominent patch to the base of the primaries, as you can see in all of these photos. Red-tailed shrike. Also note that red-tailed shrike has a much larger bill than Isabelline shrike, and generally looks much meaner, doesn't look as cute as Isabelline shrike. It also has a much more prominent mask. So this is for adults. Adult red-tailed shrikes, both males and females, have a prominent mask and a larger bill than Isabelline shrike, and also a more prominent primary patch. Now, again, juveniles can be a little difficult, and I think differentiating juveniles just does take some experience between the two. And I suggest that whenever you see a juvenile shrike that you think could be either Isabelline or red-tailed shrike, look at the bill size, look at maybe the color of the tail as well, and try and take a photograph if possible, if you come across a juvenile that is little difficult to identify. But again, the white patch at the base of primaries is a good way to go about that. Brown shrike, again, brown shrike versus red-tailed shrike, again, can be a little difficult. But again, note that brown shrike does not have as prominent a white patch on the base of primaries as red-tailed shrike. And red-tailed shrike generally has a contrasting crown, which is much browner, contrasting with a slightly grayer back. Whereas brown shrike is more single colored. The back, everything generally feels equally brown for brown shrike. Although brown shrike can have a very similar looking mask, and it can also have sometimes a prominent supercilium, but typically red-tailed shrike will have a much more prominent supercilium than brown shrike. So coming to red-tailed shrike versus brown shrike, red-tailed shrike typically has a more prominent supercilium. Both males and females, adults, have a more contrasting rufous crown to the rest of the body, and has a more prominent patch on the wing than brown shrike. So these are three ways to tell apart red-tailed shrike and brown shrike. Red-back shrike, generally the confusion is with bayback, smaller mask, and again, lack of a primary patch. Isabelline and red-tailed again can be difficult. Both used to be the same species, but red-tailed typically has a stronger looking bill, has more darker patterns, and has a more prominent supercilium. Long-tailed shrike, if you're looking at an adult, is fairly distinctive. Don't look at the first image here. Look at the next few images where you see that Isabelline shrike long-tailed shrike typically is gray-backed with a little bit of orange. And I'm sure you're all familiar to an extent with long-tailed shrike. And long-tailed shrike, if you see an adult, is difficult to confuse with the others. It's more easy to confuse actually with great gray shrike than with any of the others because of the gray back. But again, if you're dealing with juveniles, it can get difficult. And I suggest that again, take photos of juvenile shrikes. Keep an eye out for the primary patch, how distinctive it is, and about bill size. Keep an eye out for bill size, and even tail color, etc. Juvenile shrikes do take photographs, and I think that's a general a general instruction to everybody. But if you see a very, very reddish looking juvenile without a particularly tiny bill, but generally very reddish, you are very likely looking at a red-back shrike. So you can tentatively either keep it as shrike species or red-back shrike if you see a very reddish looking juvenile, and you can share photos with the rest of the group so that we can all help each other with identification at this stage. So I've very quickly gone through this, but go through images that are available, right? And these on Macaulay and eBird, and this will really help tell them apart, help you tell them apart. So yeah, I wanted to quickly go through this because we don't have much time, so that there's a little time for some questions. Yeah, as Nirav said, brown shrikes are also passage migrants in this period. So yeah, they can be confusion Isabelline. But again, brown shrike, there are slight simpler. The best way that I use to tell them apart is again bill size. So brown shrike is much heavier build than Isabelline, is much less cute looking than Isabelline, and has a much stronger mask typically. So these are indicative features. If you ever have a doubt, take a photograph, share the photo on the group, so that we don't we can all help each other identify. Any questions about this? Look out for the mask. Look out for the mask, look out for the white patch at the base of primaries, which is very, very indicative typically.
From 166, now we are 59 on the line. 7 or 8 have left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, people have been leaving throughout. That's okay. Oops.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the last question was from Ashish Bhai to share the map. Arpit has already replied to him that it is not possible to share the offline maps. One will have to download. એટલે તમારે આશીષ ભાઈ તમારા ફોન ઉપર જ ડાઉનલોડ કરવો પડશે, તમારા ફોન ઉપર જ રહેશે. બીજું કોઈ કરશે તો એ તમારી સાથે શેર નહીં કરી શકે. Then there was a question by Parth Vag that what is the availability of electricity. So usually all these places would have electricity, but to add to it would always be good if you have any power banks for the field use or anything. So it's always good to have power banks.
Okay, thank you.
I think we are done with the questions now. If anyone has any more queries or questions, please feel free to it so that then we can wind up. I think we.
Yeah, I think we're end of a 2-hour session, so everyone's probably quite tired.
Thank you everyone for joining us.
Wish to really informative, exhaustive. I think everybody's query is solved at least, and they will get there all the questions solved, and they have the idea about the entire survey.
Anyone has got any further query? Please feel free to. I'm sorry. Someone is saying something.
Yeah. So I think one thing that we'll do before the survey actually starts is on WhatsApp to share a simple 3 simple flyers of what each all the plumages of the different shrikes look like. So just a photo collage. Adult female, adult male, immature. Adult female, adult male, immature. So this is of all shrikes, so that you have something else also to refer to, but nothing like the field guides. The field guides are without a doubt the best tools to help you separate these, as well as all of the knowledge that is there in our WhatsApp group. So a combination of these two, the ability to take photos and to notice these important features about the white patch, bill size, and mask, and say color of back, etc. Notice those features, and yeah, all of those together can help ID.
Kunan, can you tell about something likely or likely to look for the incidental cycling while traveling? Suppose a seen sparrow, or what was that woodpecker?
Yes, so those are very far-fetched dreams of all
Yeah.
world watch.
Let it be.
Not only across Gujarat, but across India. Are,
Somebody is trumpeting.
yeah. Okay.
Yes, somebody has
Trumpeter
a role
Finch.
near them.
Ashish call is there. आशीष भाई को म्यूट कर दो.
Sorry.
Okay. So basically, there are 3 or 4 more species which we have also referred to in the article. One is Eurasian scope owl, which we have already mentioned. That is also very rare, but is quite often seen through Rajasthan and Gujarat during passage migration. Since sparrow, there are old record from Kutch, and could be possible that is a small population is surviving. Kutch has never been surveyed so extensively, so it is quite possible that there may be a small population which may pop up during survey. The most prized species would be the Singh woodpecker, which is only recorded from Rajasthan border area, usually regularly seen through the neighboring country Pakistan, but has never been reported, but has got suitable habitat in certain bordering areas of Gujarat as well.
Yeah.
So it is usually found in forests across the belt, reed belt. So all of us can look for these prize catches if someone comes across them. I think if Sin woodpecker is spotted, all 100 people are going to assemble at one point, including Ashwin Viswanathan. So yeah, these are certain species which we may look for. And thank you so much everyone for participation. Hope to see everyone and meet everyone. It's been such a wonderful initiative by all of us, and hope to take it further.
Tina, can you mute yourself? Tina Ghadge, can you mute yourself?
Shall we? I think we are ending here now.
Okay.
So any questions, any doubts, our numbers are there, so anyone can approach us on personal messages. If someone feels that the issue is of concern for all the participants, the same issue can be shared on WhatsApp group also, so everyone can have their inputs. And we all will keep in touch through WhatsApp group. As Ashwin said, that we'll keep on sharing the flyers with identification features. We'll share the basic requirements which we can carry, which comes to our mind, which we can carry as basic amenity along with us. Here I would like to suggest to all the participants that though we may carry the things which we need essential, but at the same time we may also keep in mind that we may not burden the luggage with so many unnecessary things, because at some point the vehicles will be carrying 5 to 6 people along with their luggages. So we all may try to minimize the luggage what we are carrying. That is one thing I would like to share. Shall we end with this note?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
thanks a
Thank
lot
you
to
so
everyone.
much for participating again.
Yeah, and really wonderful to see so much participation, and hope to meet everybody on 9th evening.
Yes. I think for 9th, we will make mandatory for everyone, even for those teams who are going to Dholavira, to come to Bhuj. Let them travel a couple of hours more.
No.
No,
If
road
they
are
are using their vehicle, then only. You cannot afford to have the 200 kilometers, 250 kilometers to 300
Udai, let us. Don't.
300 kilometers.
We'll have it.
We will decide later on. We will decide later on.
We'll decide later.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much.
Sponsorship, then definitely.
Everyone, thank you so
Try
much.
9 o'clock. They will leave at 12 or reach 12. And if he goes
Okay.
wrong,
Nirav has put up for Upchur's Wobbler. Apart from Upchur's Wobbler, there is Olivaceous Wobbler,
Olivaceous.
Eastern Olivaceous.
Hmm.
Okay, Ashwin has already written that.
Okay.
So, we have so many surprises on the way.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Ashwin. Please
Okay.
end it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.